I want to start with a question, and I want you to really sit with it for a second before you answer. When was the last time you felt completely like yourself? Not just rested, not just okay, but sharp, steady on your feet, clear in your head, the way you remember feeling a few years back. If you had to think hard about that, if the honest answer is it's been a while, then I want you to stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you might be the single most overlooked explanation for why so many of us feel like we're slipping as we get older. And the part that gets me, the part that I genuinely can't let go of, is how often it gets missed. Not by careless people, by good doctors in good clinics with the best of intentions. It gets missed because it wears a disguise. It dresses up as something we've all been taught to expect and accept. It dresses up as old age. I'm talking about vitamin B12. And before you roll your eyes and think, oh, another vitamin video, I need you to understand why this one is different. B12 isn't one of those nutrients where a little extra makes you feel peppy and a little less doesn't matter much. B12 is the nutrient your body uses to keep your nerves wrapped and protected, to make healthy red blood cells, and to keep the wiring in your brain firing the way it should. When you start running low, the symptoms don't show up with a label on them. They show up as tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. They show up as a strange tingling or numbness in your hands and feet, like your fingers have fallen asleep and won't quite wake up. They show up as standing in the kitchen and forgetting why you walked in there. They show up as feeling unsteady, like the floor isn't quite where you left it. And here's the cruel trick of it. Every single one of those things is exactly what we've been told to expect from getting older. So we shrug. We say, well, that's just my age now, and the deficiency keeps quietly doing its work. Let me give you the number that stopped me in my tracks when I first looked into this. Research suggests that somewhere around 1 in 5 adults over the age of 60 are low in B12. 1 in 5. And in nursing homes and care settings, where people are older and frailer and on more medications, some studies put that figure as high as 1 in 3. Even closer to 40% in certain groups. Think about what that means. Picture a room with you and 4 of your friends in it. Picture your card game, your church group, your morning coffee crowd. Statistically, one of you is walking around low on a nutrient that affects your nerves, your blood, and your brain. And the odds are nobody in that room knows it. Not because anyone did anything wrong, but because the symptoms are so easy to explain away, and because, and this is the part that really matters, a standard checkup doesn't always catch it. So let me explain why this happens, because once you understand the mechanism, you'll never look at it the same way again. When you eat a piece of fish or an egg or some meat, the B12 in that food is bound up tight with protein. To free it so your body can actually absorb it, you need stomach acid, strong stomach acid. And here's the thing nobody tells you when you hit your 60s and 70s. Your stomach naturally starts making less acid as you age. There's a condition called atrophic gastritis, which is just a fancy way of saying the lining of your stomach has thinned out and quieted down. And it's incredibly common in older adults. When that happens, the acid that's supposed to unlock the B12 from your food simply isn't there in the amounts you need. So you can be eating a perfectly decent diet, eating your eggs and your fish and your meat, doing everything right, and still not pulling the B12 out of that food. Your plate looks healthy, your blood tells a different story. And it doesn't stop there. Let me ask you something. Are you taking anything for heartburn? Those purple pills, the antacids, the acid reducers that so many of us reach for after a big meal or to settle a chronically upset stomach. Those medications work by lowering your stomach acid. That's the whole point of them. But remember what we just said, that you need stomach acid to absorb B12 from food. So the very thing that's soothing your heartburn may also be quietly cutting off your B12 supply. I'm not telling you to stop taking your medication. Please don't do that on the strength of a video. But I am telling you that if you've been on one of those for years, it's a conversation worth having with your doctor. And there's another big one. If you take metformin for blood sugar, for diabetes, that medication is also well known to lower B12 levels over time. Millions of people are on metformin. Many of them have never once been told that it could be draining this particular nutrient out of them year after year. Now, I want to walk you through what low B12 actually feels like from the inside. Because I think when you hear it described properly, some of you are going to feel a chill of recognition. It starts subtle, a bone-deep tiredness that doesn't match how much you slept. You go to bed at a decent hour, you sleep through, and you still wake up feeling like you're dragging a weight behind you all day. Then maybe you notice your hands, a tingling in the fingertips, a pins and needles feeling, sometimes a numbness that creeps in, especially at night. Same thing can happen in your feet. And because B12 protects the nerves that help you sense where your body is in space, you might start to feel a little off balance. Maybe you've caught yourself reaching for the wall or the railing more than you used to. Maybe walking on uneven ground feels less sure than it once did. We chalk that up to age too. We say our balance is going, but sometimes it isn't your balance going. It's your nerves, starved of the one thing they need to stay insulated. Then there's the part that frightens people the most, and I want to handle this gently because I know it touches a nerve. B12 deficiency can affect your thinking. It can cause a fogginess, a slowness, trouble finding words, trouble holding on to a thought long enough to finish it. Forgetfulness that feels worse than the normal, where did I put my keys kind. And here is why this matters so enormously. Those symptoms can look almost exactly like the early stages of dementia, almost identical. And every year, there are older adults who get treated as though their minds are simply failing them, when underneath it all is a B12 deficiency that nobody checked for. Now, I am not telling you that every memory problem is B12. I would never say something so reckless. Most memory issues are not B12, but some are. And the heartbreaking, hopeful truth is this. When the cause is low, B12, and you catch it early enough, treating it can bring that clarity back. The fog can lift. People can get pieces of themselves back. That possibility alone, to me, is worth the price of a simple blood test. Let me tell you about one more sign, because it's strange and specific and easy to overlook: your tongue. B12 deficiency can cause your tongue to become sore, smooth, and unusually red, almost beefy looking. People notice that food tastes different, or that their tongue feels raw or tender for no clear reason. If that's happening to you, alongside the tiredness and the tingling, that's 3 signs pointing in the same direction. And that's the moment to pay attention. So, now you're probably asking the obvious question. If this is so common and so easy to miss, why isn't my doctor catching it? And I want to be fair here, because I don't believe this is about bad doctors. It's about a system that's stretched thin and a set of symptoms that genuinely overlap with a dozen other things. Your doctor has 15 minutes with you. You come in tired and a little forgetful and a bit unsteady, and you're 73. And honestly, all of those things are extremely normal at 73. So unless something prompts them to look specifically, B12 doesn't always make it onto the list of things to check. A standard annual blood panel does not automatically include a B12 level. It has to be asked for. And that, right there, is why I'm making this video. Because the single most powerful thing you can do after watching this is not to panic and not to start buying supplements off the internet. It's to walk into your next appointment and say, plainly, I'd like to have my B12 level checked. That one sentence. That's the whole ask. And if it turns out you are low, here's the genuinely good news, and it's better than you might expect. This is one of the most treatable deficiencies there is. Remember how I told you that the problem is often that your stomach can't free the B12 from food? Well, here's the beautiful loophole. The B12 in supplements isn't bound to protein the way it is in food. It's already in a free crystalline form. And studies show that even people with that thinned out, low acid stomach can still absorb the B12 from a supplement just fine, because it doesn't need the stomach acid to unlock it. So for a lot of people, a daily oral supplement is enough to turn the whole thing around. For others, especially if the deficiency is more serious, or there's a problem with a substance called intrinsic factor, the doctor might recommend injections, at least to start. But the point is, the fix exists. It's safe, it's inexpensive, and it works. The only thing standing between a lot of people and feeling like themselves again is the test that nobody ordered. Now, I want to talk about food too, because I'm a big believer in food first wherever it's possible. The richest sources of B12 are animal foods. Fish is wonderful here, especially the oily fish like salmon, sardines, trout, and tuna. Shellfish are actually some of the most concentrated sources on the planet, so things like clams and mussels are powerhouses if you enjoy them. Then you've got meat, poultry, eggs and dairy, milk, cheese, yogurt, all of which carry good amounts. If you eat a varied diet with these foods, you're getting B12 in. But, and this is the part I need you to hold on to, getting it in through your mouth is only half the battle. If your stomach can't absorb it because of low acid or medication, then eating more salmon won't solve the problem on its own. That's exactly why the blood test matters so much. It tells you whether the issue is what you're eating or whether it's what your body is failing to absorb. Those are two very different problems with two different solutions, and you can't guess your way to the right one. I do want to say a special word to anyone watching who eats little or no meat. Maybe you've drifted toward a more plant-based way of eating for your heart or your joints, or just because that's what appeals to you now. That's a perfectly reasonable choice, and there's a lot to admire in it. But B12 is the one nutrient that is genuinely difficult to get from plants, because it just isn't naturally present in plant foods in any meaningful amount. So, if you've cut back on animal foods, you are in a higher risk group. Full stop. And a supplement isn't optional for you. It's important. Fortified foods like certain cereals and nutritional yeast can help. But please don't leave this to chance. Get tested and talk to someone about supplementing properly. Now, I need to talk to you about timing, because this is the part that turns a simple problem into a serious one if it's ignored, and I'd be doing you a disservice if I sugarcoated it. When B12 stays low for a long time, the damage it does to your nerves can stop being reversible. Early on, when you first start feeling that tingling, that numbness, that unsteadiness, the nerves are stressed but they're still intact, and replacing the B12 can let them heal and quiet back down. But if it goes on for months and years, unrecognized, untreated, the protective coating on those nerves can break down to the point where it doesn't fully come back. The numbness can become permanent. The balance trouble can become permanent. And the same is true for the cognitive side. Catch it early and the fog can lift. Leave it too long and some of that ground may be lost for good. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this because it's the single most important reason not to wait. Not to put it off until next year's checkup, not to assume it'll sort itself out. There is a window here, and the window is wider the sooner you act. That's the whole reason urgency belongs in this conversation. Not panic, urgency. Those are different things. Let me paint you a picture of how this actually plays out in real life, because I think it'll feel familiar to some of you. Imagine a woman in her 70s. Let's say she's been on a heartburn medication for the better part of a decade. And she eats reasonably well, but she's been leaning more toward toast and tea and lighter meals because her appetite isn't what it was. Over a couple of years, she gets tired, but everyone's tired. She notices her feet feel funny sometimes, but she figures it's her circulation. She gets a little more forgetful, and her family starts to worry quietly. And somebody whispers the word that everybody dreads. She starts pulling back from the things she loves because she doesn't trust her footing, and she doesn't trust her memory. And the whole time, the actual problem is sitting right there in a number that nobody's measured. Then one day, a doctor finally orders the test, sees the level, starts treatment, and over the following months, she comes back to herself. Not all the way maybe, because some of it waited too long, but enough that she gets her life back. I tell you that, not because it happens to everyone, but because it happens to someone, somewhere, every single day. And the only variable that decided how it ended was whether anyone thought to look. I also want to give you a little more on the testing, because there's a wrinkle here that's worth knowing. The standard test is a simple blood draw that measures the B12 level in your blood. For a lot of people, that's enough to give a clear answer. But sometimes the result lands in a gray zone, a borderline range where it's not obviously low, but it's not comfortably normal either. In those cases, there are two more sensitive tests a doctor can order, with names you don't need to memorize but that you can ask about. One measures a substance called methylmalonic acid, and the other measures homocysteine. When B12 is truly low at the cellular level, those two markers tend to rise, even when the basic B12 number looks borderline. So if you ever get told your level is low normal or borderline, but you genuinely feel off, that's the moment to ask whether those follow-up tests make sense for you. You are allowed to advocate for yourself. You are allowed to say, I hear you that it's borderline, but I don't feel right. Can we dig a little deeper? A good doctor will welcome that. It helps them help you. And let me be clear about who's carrying the most risk here, so you can place yourself honestly on the map. You're at higher risk if you're over 60, and that risk climbs with each decade. You're at higher risk if you're on long-term acid-reducing medication or on metformin. You're at higher risk if you've had any kind of stomach or intestinal surgery, including weight loss surgery, because that changes how you absorb things. You're at higher risk if you drink heavily, if you have certain autoimmune or digestive conditions, or if you eat little to no animal food. And you're at higher risk simply if your appetite has shrunk and you're eating less overall than you used to, which is so common in later years. If 2 or 3 of those describe you, I don't want you to be frightened, but I do want you to be the person who asks for the test, rather than the person who waits and wonders. Here's what I really want you to take away from all of this, and I'm going to say it as plainly as I know how. A huge number of the things we have been taught to accept as just getting old, the tiredness, the tingling hands, the wobble in our step, the fog rolling into our thinking, are not always the unchangeable facts of aging that we assume they are. Sometimes they are symptoms, sometimes they have a cause, and sometimes that cause is something as simple, as fixable, as a vitamin your body has quietly stopped absorbing. I find that idea more hopeful than frightening, honestly, because it means that some of the decline we brace ourselves for might not be inevitable at all. It might just be waiting for someone to ask the right question. So, I'm going to leave you with 3 things to do, and I want them to be small enough that you'll actually do them. First, the next time you see your doctor, ask out loud to have your B12 level checked. Don't assume it's already being done. Ask. Second, take an honest inventory of your medications. If you're on a long-term acid reducer or on metformin, mention this video's topic to your doctor and ask how it affects your B12. You're not second-guessing them, you're partnering with them. And third, if you eat little or no animal food, take that seriously and get a real plan in place rather than hoping it works out. Those 3 things cost you almost nothing, and they could be the difference between resigning yourself to a slow fade and actually getting some of your sharpness, your steadiness, and your energy back. I made this because I've watched too many people give up ground they didn't have to give up. They surrendered to symptoms that had a name and a fix, simply because nobody ever connected the dots for them. I don't want that to be you. You deserve to know that feeling foggy and tired and unsteady is not always just the price of getting older. Sometimes it's a question waiting to be asked. So, ask it. Get the test. And if the answer comes back low, know that you've just found something you can actually do something about. That's not bad news. That's the best kind of news there is, the kind you can act on. Take care of yourself. Pay attention to what your body is telling you, and don't let anyone, including that quiet voice in your own head, talk you into accepting as permanent something that might just be waiting to be fixed.